Attention, I address you.
I've seen him in opera rehearsals where perhaps the opera artists have thought they've said something under their breath in Italian because, you know, it's just this man at a Christian school and he's rebuked them in Italian. Well, certainly the Lord put Dr. Gustafson in the right position when he made him dean of the School of Fine Arts for so many years. It's no original statement with me to call him a Renaissance man.
I would just describe him as the term Renaissance has become almost cliche in terms of describing him, but really I can't think of a better term.
Incredibly gifted man, not only a musician, but the Renaissance man in fine arts.
He's dabbled in everything, and he's good at it too. It's not just mediocre at these things. He's very good. The artistic work he's done on the stage productions, the musical work that he's done for our ministry teams, for the films, for church choir, all of those things. To have a single man who has a knowledge of all of it, to me, was truly amazing.
Well, that's the particularly amazing thing about him, is that he's so broad and has the overall perspective of so much stuff going on. He's particularly interested in the stage productions.
My first encounter with Dr. Gustafson in a film was as a witch in Macbeth. We didn't typecast him, but we did it because he had such magnificent long arms and fingers.
Upon the heath, there to meet with Macbeth.
One of my fondest memories of classic players is being able to play Prince Hal opposite his Sir John Falstaff, and I was always, first of all, amused by the fact that here's this tall, incredibly thin man being crammed into this suit and suddenly 3 times his weight, but more important than that, I was just so impressed with his professionalism and his ability to play somebody so completely different from himself.
I am my father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night, and for the day confined to fasted fires, till the foul crimes done in my days of nature are burnt and purged away.
Will you trust him now? What a polyglot religion you preach. We all have our gods. Each nation has its own. But this is a hybrid religion you speak of.
Brothers and sisters in Christ, today is the day we celebrate the Lord's Supper.
He's best known as a musician, as a composer and arranger and conductor.
Through the opera, the oratorio, working with the church choir on campus for many years, singing solos in church, doing roles in operas, performing in plays. The whole gamut. He's been there as the leader.
We have a tendency to appreciate him for being here, but his compositions are played by orchestras all over.
But then I started playing his music and I realized that this man was a serious composer and a talented composer, one well-known, well-respected by musicians around the country.
In the early 1960s, he composed the music for Red Runs the River. After that, he composed and conducted all the music for our feature films, Flame in the Wind, Sheffy, Beyond the Night, The Printing, and many other shorter films. When he was composing, he would come up to the editing room and work with a Steenbeck. It was kind of amusing because he would have the music in front of him, he would whistle all the parts.
We recorded Sheffy on the soundstage at Unusual Films, which is a marvelous experience in itself. And Dr. Gustafson would be standing in front of us. The film would be over our heads behind us. And sometimes we'd actually have to stop a cue because his bones would crack or his shoes would squeak. But the thing I remember most is that he had his music timed out perfectly for every change of scene. And we would get to the point where Sheffy was going to be riding into the scene on his horse. And Dr. Gustafson so wanted that to hit at a particular place in the music. And he would be conducting, and if we hit it right on, his face would light up. And then, even though he continued conducting, he would go like this on his nose, like he hit it right on the nose, and it would make his day, his week, his month, and we'd all be ever so thrilled, just like he was. One of the things that certainly has influenced me, perhaps more than anything, is a balance that he's always had. I feel like he can interact with any different kind of musicians. He can eat filet mignon with the greatest musicians of the world, really, when he's conducting the opera and the opera artists. But he can eat fried chicken with his colleagues and those of us here at school. But he really can also eat hot dogs with the crowd at a little church somewhere.
I've been out with him on the weekends when we've done choral clinics in various churches, where you're working with people who are not trained musicians. And yet, by the end of the session, he's got them singing well. He has a unique ability to get the best out of an oratorio chorus at the university, or the best out of a small church choir in a local church in the Midwest. Unique ability to inspire confidence and musicianship in people of all abilities and levels.
Obviously, we respect him in fundamentalism, but when these guest artists come from the outside, these are unsaved people who come to the university to perform the opera roles. They leave with an extremely good impression of him and Christ because of dealing with him with 2 weeks in the conducting roles of the orchestra. So he's respected not only by Christians, but by the unsaved world as well, which speaks very highly of his talent.
Here is a man at a fundamental Christian school in South Carolina who knows the language, and he is as good as any director that they would work with anywhere in the world.
When Dr. Gustafson graduated, I felt, well, here's a man that can be used in a position where we need somebody. And I thought, he's mighty young, but we need a dean. We'll try him and see. It's wonderful to see a man who develops the way you hope he's going to develop.
He taught me that art is a disciplined endeavor, that there is painstaking attention to detail. And that also helped him become a great administrator, because not only was he communicating an artistic vision, he was keeping the mechanism running, all the divisions that were under his tutelage in fine arts.
As Dean of the School of Fine Arts, he works with men and women that are creative in their own right, and they have a temperament much different than many of our academic professors.
For him to have the gifts that he has and still be able to handle a faculty of very creative people who all have their own gifts, and yet handle each one with the care that they need to supply the needs that they have as creative people, as musicians, as artists, as all the various fields that he was over. I cannot say at all that he was the hardest teacher I ever had. He always made it possible. I would have thought that with his genius of musical knowledge, he could have been so far above our heads that most everyone would have just given up and decided not to even pursue music as a career, but he doesn't.
I was very honored to have been able to take some music classes, and it was a wonderful experience, and I was able to watch him as he poured out his own knowledge of music into other students who are then going to turn around and serve God.
He knows that his ministry lives on through his students, and I just am so thankful that he's cared enough about his students to understand what their ministry should be as well as his own.
The arts is part of our charter mandate. It's not something that's just tagged on. It's an integral part of what we do here. And more than any person, perhaps besides the late Chancellor, Dr. Gustafson was the caretaker of that, the man who really saw that that vision was executed in practical ways and that the high standards of artistic endeavor were maintained.
He made sure that the founder's vision and the chancellor's excitement about culture here at the university was brought down to the level of reality for all of us on a day-by-day basis.
In James, when he talks about being perfect and entire, that concept is you have everything you need and all that you have is developed to its fullest, and I think in so many ways that exemplifies Dr. Gus.
Gracious, humble, talented, godly, friendly, patient, long-suffering. All of those describe that man. And he would never describe himself that way. He's probably very uncomfortable this evening because we're paying all this attention to him. But he is a man that deserves it and has done great things for the Lord, and tonight we can pay tribute to him in a very special way. He is a remarkable man, and we are all better as a result of his work with us during these past 50 years that he's been a part of the university.